Welcome to a special episode of At the Boundary, the podcast from the Global and National Security Institute at the University of South Florida. I'm Jim Cardoso, Senior Director for GNSI, and your host for At the Boundary. Because of the events unfolding across Iran, Israel, and the rest of the Middle East over the past 12 days, we thought it would be a great idea to bring in GNSI Research Fellow Dr. Arman Mahmoudian for a special episode to gather his insights on the conflict that has now directly drawn in the United States. Arman has been on various media sources constantly over the past 2 weeks, and I highly recommend his analysis on LinkedIn and X. Even before that, he has been leading a research project here at GNSI called the Axis of Resistance. It's a comprehensive analysis of the group of countries and non-state groups brought together by Iran in a loose coalition designed to destabilize the region. And of note, Arman is joining us from vacation, so we need to, recognize the dedication. Thank you for that, Arman, and welcome back to the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the kind introduction. It's always great to be here. Thank you.
So we are recording this on the afternoon of June 24th, and I make that disclaimer because we've watched episodes or events change on a daily basis. So when this comes out, there could be some adjustments from then, but we're just going to talk about what we know up till June 24th at about 3:30 in the afternoon Eastern time. So Arman, give us a quick summary from your perspective of where we've been over the past 12 days and where we're at now.
Well, I think 12 days ago on June 13, Israelis believe that two facts, the momentum that they had in terms of Iran's weakness. Iran has been weakened since October 7. Proxy system not completely been dismantled, but it has been deorganized. There's no doubt in it. Nationalized it. Hezbollah is weaker. Hamas is at the verge of, losing its territory. Assad is out of the pictures. Saudis received the serious, Saudis, Houthis suffer the serious blow from the Americans and Israelis. So on one hand, Iran was weakened in Israelis' assessment and many others. It was the weakest point they had since the Iran-Iraq war. And the chances of you finding them in a similar position again in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, it would be risky. You never know what happens, but you never can be assured of that too. And the second thing was that the Iranian breakthrough to build a bomb was closer as always. However, I don't want to get to the intelligence assessment debate that how close were they. But what we know is that the Iran's nuclear project had all components, from the heavy reactor to enriched uranium to underground facilities to the labs, everything, and the science, the know-how to have the bomb, to build the bomb. Iran's stockpile of the enriched uranium was heavily high. It was something about around the 400 kilogram. So we were at the situation that if Iran made the political decision to build a bomb, it wouldn't be just a bomb. It would be almost a nuclear arsenal. Estimates was that Iran could have made about 10 bomb with the stockpile they have. So there was, a chessboard game was set for the Israelis to act on it. And they act on it. They act on it with the precise military operation, but more importantly, with the very sophisticated intelligence operation. They dismantled a good chunk of Iran's at least sophisticated aerial defense. They deorganized or decapitated Iran's military leadership, not necessarily through aerial attack outside of Iran, but through the cells they had inside the Tehran and the rest of the country. And from there, we got to the exchange of fire between the two countries, in which Israelis focus on Iran's military infrastructures, Iran's military leadership, and the nuclear project, and some other component of them. Iranians were much more interested in inflicting pressure on the Israelis' population and society. That is why a good chunk of Iranian attacks were discriminatory, basically attacking both the civilians and military targets. The idea probably behind of it was that by completely disrupting the daily life of citizens, and Israel being a democracy, they can make a pressure on the Netanyahu and, pushing or pressing Israelis back down. Both sides reached a ceasefire yesterday, or June 23rd, which almost was broke hours later, earlier today, June 24th. What we know now, what the damages and the losses of the both sides, Iran's nuclear project has been seriously damaged, but it is very hard to say, is it completely destroyed or not? There are some newses. Today we have read another newses that I believe it was the Wall Street Journal, quoting from an assistant at White House assistant, that it seems one of the components of the Fordo is unharmed. It's very hard to verify. It's about 60 meters under the ground or mountain, so it's until there are inspections close by, we can say. But what we know, Natanz is almost gone. The heavy reactor in Iraq is gone. Laboratories and facilities in Isfahan is complete. It seems to be completely destroyed. The reactor they had in Tehran is out of the picture too. An entire tier of Iran military leadership is gone. The chief of staff two commander of the IRGC's back to back, commander of the IRGC's ground forces, two commander of the IRGC's intelligence organization, even some former intelligence, officers, including the Taib, who was a former intelligence who was the former commander of IRGC's intelligence. Iran's ballistic missiles has been, and its site production, its manufacture, its fuel production being heavily damaged. It seems Iran has lost at least about half of its launchers. So now Iran is in the position that its manufacture of the missiles has been degraded, but also the capability to deliver the missiles, being as the underground, the sites or the launchers have been also undermined. So the damages on the Iranian side is significant. On the Israeli side, the damage is going to be mostly economic rather than the military. The war itself costs Israel something about $290 million per day only for their air defense. So each day of their air defense operation cost them almost $300 million. There is the report says that about 8,000 to 10,000 Israelis has lost their home during the Iranian attacks, or either totally been destroyed, like the attacks that happened on June 23rd, later hours, or badly needs that repair. The Israelis also now are facing a dilemma about the Fordo, and more importantly, I think the question now is that where is Iran's stockpile of the enriched uranium? This 400 kilogram can be a game changer, because there is always a fear that Iran has the know-how of the enriching uranium and building centrifuges. I think that's a reality that we need to accept, and I think everybody accepts. So the fear is that Iran might build smaller cell of the enriched uranium here and there, and then use that stockpile that already has to build a bomb or dirty bomb. So that's the question that the Israeli intelligence committee, and I'm sure the United States intelligence committee has so far. That's the assessment of the.
And that takes a lot of stuff that's happened over the past 12 days, and it boils it down. And there's a lot of nuance. Understand that you didn't cover as well, but that was a great summary. Thank you so much. I mean, a big part of it too, obviously from the U.S. perspective, is the U.S.'s entry into the conflict. And President Trump, stated that the objective was Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. You've sort of touched on this, but I'm going to ask you to kind of dig into that a little bit more. Do you think, did they succeed? Did the U.S. succeed in keeping them from having a nuclear weapon?
I think the United States and the operation against the Fordo, the Midnight Hammer, did a significant and a splendid job on at least rolling back Iran's nuclear project. But to answer the question that did they succeed totally, meaning they completely neutralize any attempt by Iranian to build a nuclear bomb, it requires us to find out where is this stockpile, this 400 kilogram of highly enriched, because that's a problem. In order to build a bomb, you need to enrich uranium for 92 to 93%. But the thing is that while the Iranians enrich uranium is 60%, but once you reach the threshold of the 60%, from 60 to 90%, actually the jump is very easy. It seems that you already got the job by 90% done. And it's not my assessment, it's actually the scientists out there. So we have a country that has a 400 kilogram of those that can build 10 bombs. And days before the war, Iran tested a new missile, a missile that was capable of carrying a 2-ton warhead. which seems that they've been making also in progress on the delivery system. As long as we don't know where is this stockpile, and more importantly, what would happen to Iran's the scientists who've been involved, the secret labs who've been involved, the would be the military sites that they have a dual purposes, because it happened in past that IR, for instance, the Parchin site, which was an IRGC site, a site under the control of Defense Ministry, totally separated from the Iran Civil Atomic Energy Organization. But they've been developing science and technologies and material related to the nuclear project. So as long as we cannot answer all of these questions, specifically speaking, again, the stockpile, it's very hard to say that the United States for 100% succeeded in that goal.
I've read, not just the ability to build a bomb, but the will to build a bomb. And I've read two schools of thought. Again, assuming the ceasefire in place now holds, I've kind of read two schools of thought starting to emerge. One is that Iran will not pursue building the bomb so much because there's a sense that they'll just get schwacked again by the Israelis, maybe assisted by the United States. That's school of thought number one. School of thought two is, since they have almost nothing left, I mean, like you said, a good part of their missile capability is gone. A great amount of their senior leadership is gone. And so they're going to have to fill those vacuums as well. The second school of thought is, well, that's all we got to defend ourselves is a nuclear weapon. And they've seen some success from other nations especially when you look at Russia and Ukraine, a lot of the time, some of the, any sense of lack of activity against Russia is because they had the ability to strike back with nuclear capability. What's your thought on those two schools of thought, and which one do you support more?
This is a really good question, and I think that's one of the most important questions right now. Iran, it's very delicate position because Iran been attacked by two countries within the last two weeks that they both have nuclear weapons. At least one of them has, and the other allegedly, the Israelis. So it makes an impact on your decision making. And I think which way Iran goes to build a bomb or to completely, distance itself from the bomb, because there's always option of being a Japan. After World War II, the cost of World War II was so heavy for the Japanese that for a long time they didn't want to do anything with the armed forces. They even called the military the defense forces. I mean, they were really, really persistent to kind of. Then there was a desire among the Japanese public, to a lesser extent the German, but the German were facing the territorial split after the Cold War. The impact for them was a bit different. So there is a chance that the Iranians might do that, but there is also a chance that the Iranians, as you said, want to build the stronger deterrence. I think there is another factor that plays a role in it. And the factor that plays a role in it is that to what extent Israelis wants to leverage Iran's military weakness. So let's say that Israel wants to apply the zero tolerance policy toward Iran, which is a policy they have in Lebanon. And basically means that whenever or wherever that Israel feels something is happening that might threaten Israel's security, they target it. And they're actively doing it in Lebanon. They are doing it in Gaza too, for the very reasonable reasons. Let's say that they want to do this in Iran. There is air defense being built. There is a ballistic missile site over here they want to target. That would put Iranian in the position to find out, well, with this, we cannot be a sovereign state. We can't do anything. So we need to have a jackpot call in order to, to tell them that, look, there is one thing else that I have in mind or I have in my pocket. If the application of the zero policy against the Iran is Israel's goal, I think the likelihood of the Islamic Republic seeks somewhat of a nuclear bomb is more likely. If not, that's a different question. It's very hard still to answer. Yeah. But I think less likely, yeah.
It is hard to answer. And I mean, in the past, we could say, well, Israel's actions will normally have a level of support or at least alignment with U.S. national interest. But the last 12 days has shown that sometimes Israelis are just going to do what the Israelis think they got to do. They're going to do what's in their best national interest. And really, in this case, it seems like the U.S. sort of got pulled into it towards something that multiple administrations have, for 3 decades, administrations said, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And it's sort of like the U.S. sort of got pulled into action here to actually do something about that. So now that that's been done, Iran, they launched some missiles at U.S. forces in Qatar that really didn't seem to have much impact. I mean, to you, does that seem almost like a half-hearted effort by Iran just to kind of say, well, we did something, but not really something that would escalate things?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, first of all, President Trump himself confirmed that Iranian let the Americans know there was an advance notice. In his social media, Truth Social, he thanked Iranian for the early notice. And I was tracking the events in the Persian Gulf. Qatar shut down its airspace about 2 hours before the Iranian missile attack. Mm-hmm. Not Iraqis, not UAEs, Qatar. They later on joined on. So I think there was a really preparation and it wasn't like Ayatollah Khamenei was concerned about the life of the American soldiers. It was purely a pragmatic decision. For Iran, opening a second front of war would be the exact result that had for the Germany, or even worse during the World War II in 1941. They already had significant problem with the British. Then they decided, okay, you know what? We are busy with the English. Now we are also going to invade the Russians.
Let's go attack Russia. What a great idea that was.
Yeah, exactly. And you know how it turned for them. It changed entirely their fate. And I think Islamic Republic was very much after. If they have done something to seriously damage the Americans, that might have been the end of the Islamic Republic as an entity that we know at least, in a shape that we at least see it.
Yeah. Do you think that, though, there may be some other counteractions lurking out there, maybe something asymmetric? There's been a lot of discussion about some type of cyber attack on U.S. infrastructure or something like that. Do you see that still lurking out there as a possibility?
Yes, there is speculation about many things, the cyber attacks, the so-called sleeper cells. I would say there might be some demonstration of the capability, but not necessarily an aggressive attack. And what do I mean is that
almost for like internal purposes more than external, like maybe to show the Iranian people, yes, we're doing something. We're counterattacking, but not really to inflame the situation externally.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. To kind of, send a signal to the people, and also maybe send a signal to the foreigners that we still have stuff to buy, to bug you with it. So, but I really doubt that at this point it's not irrational, and it's not in their interest to do something like the damage to the strategic interests or the life of the Americans or other countries that to do it right now. They are in a very, very weak position. They have a lot to recover. There's a great chance that they won't recover from a good chunk of the damage being done to them. It just doesn't seem rational. But the states can be irrational too. So I want to just put this whole idea that the states always operate rational is a myth. We have seen countries being irrational on and off. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, but it's not rational. I can tell that. Yeah.
Iran's, their number one goal in a lot of ways is to preservation of the administration, preservation of the Islamic State of Iran, and not that. From everything I've always heard and read, that by far it goes beyond any of their other national interests, which being the elimination of Israel, being the elimination of the ejection of the United States from the area, via propping up their various arms of the axis of resistance. You see them being able to maintain that though through this, right?
Yes, and that is true. Ayatollah Khomeini, the founding father of the Islamic Republic, in one of his very important speeches once says that in Farsi, Hifz Nizam wajib wajibat است. The English translation would be the perception or the protection of the establishment is the highest mandate. And he goes further that if between the protecting the establishment survival and doing prayer, you have to choose one, you are going to choose the protection of the state. So I, during this campaign, I've been, asked why, and I've been interviewed about it, that can these attacks lead to the collapse of regime? My personal assessment is that no. I haven't seen any evidence, historically speaking, the aerial campaign solely can lead to the collapse of the government. If the aerial campaign is followed by somewhat of a ground operation, either foreign invasion or mass local armed uprising, that can lead. But if you just attack a country from the air, and that's it, historically speaking, doesn't do it, unless the country is very weak and have a very, fragile infrastructure already. In terms of Iran, the government is damaged. But one thing that they show, and I think we should be very mindful of it, and actually I'm writing a paper about it, is that Islamic Republic, despite all of these weaknesses, they did a good job, it seems, on coup-proofing. Their military leadership is almost gone. They brought new people, but we haven't seen much of reports that the IRGC or Artesh, the conventional army, wanted to revolt or have a mutiny or remove the leadership. And we also haven't seen any report that the high leadership of Iranian military have defect. Mm-hmm. So it seems in picking people at the top, they kind of did a good job. In doing a counterintelligence and all, they couldn't do any worse job. But on that front, they I think they need to get the credit. What would happen right now is, I believe the main problem that Islamic Republic has is not protecting the establishment right now, is protecting the transition of power once Ayatollah Khamenei dies. Mm-hmm. Ayatollah Khamenei is in his late 80s, so his time is coming sooner or later. And almost his entire military henchmen, those people he relied on it, since the Qasem Soleimani, who was killed in 2020, until Bagheri and many people who've been killed during the Israeli strike, are out of picture right now. Mm-hmm. And those people were people who were supposed to guarantee and smooth the transition of power to his successor, a successor that he had in mind. Yeah, I think now Islamic Republic needs to find a solution that, in absence of those reliable people, how they can smooth the transition when the time comes. That's the main problem for them.
Very interesting. One last question. So looking kind of beyond the thrash of the past 12 days, you've been doing research on the axis of resistance. You've started a few months ago. You're continuing it through the fall. You're going to continue to cover it. What's your take on its future? You and I have talked about the fact that last year was, to quote the old children's book, was the very bad, no good, awful year for Iran. And that's seeming to have continued into this year as well. I mean, so the axis of resistance, the many tentacles of that axis, a lot of them are either gone or seriously degraded. And then Iran, as you said, itself from the except for the very top, but a lot of the senior leadership has been decapitated as well. What's the future look like for that axis of resistance?
It's really good. It's a very good question. I appreciate you asking. Yes, we in an initiative and in our episodes, I asked this question to many, and I encourage our audience to go and watch the interview I had with the Dr. Valinas, and also the first episode, the one with the Dr. Milani and the panel on Iran. I think the assumption right now is the whole idea of forward defense, which was establishing proxies and having them to fight your fight, worked for the Islamic Republic for about 3 to 4 decades. For 3 decades, it deterred foreign invasion. It helped Iran to advance its influence. But there is a time for everything to come. There is a time of expiration, I believe October 7, Yahya Sinwar, by launching the terrorist attack against Israeli civilian and military, mostly civilian, on October 7 of 2023, marked the end of the axis of resistance. But what do I mean by end is not like that the axis of resistance would be out of the picture. These militias always will be at some level of capacity. Even Hamas wouldn't be completely eradicated because the ideology will be there. It will be weaker though. Like the Al-Qaeda or ISIS, it is still there, but not as powerful as it used to be. I think what would happen, and that's the essence that I get from our guests too, Iran is going to heavily reshuffle its defense, security, and regional doctrine, meaning less reliance on the militias now, because evidently the Iran being invaded. So the primary goal of having the militias, the deterring other parties, has failed. Iran doesn't have the logistic that it used to have to support them. Assad is no longer in the picture. So Hezbollah might no longer be the priority of Iran's regional policy. I think what will be happen, and it's just my anticipation, I might be wrong. In a close future, if the Islamic Republic survive all of this and the ceasefire goes to the place, and tomorrow there wouldn't be a ground invasion of Iran or a direct strike at Ayatollah Khamenei, because that also changed things too. Iran would first adjust its military doctrine mostly on air defense capability, air force, if they can buy it. And second, most likely they would prioritize Iraq and Yemen to Lebanon, Syria, and the Palestine. So even the priorities scale, which in past used to be Hezbollah and Syria, would change. The Hezbollah in Syria, if they like it or not, they cannot have a priority. But the Hezbollah would no longer be priority. Iraq would be priority, because in Iraq is not only a matter of deterrence or forward defense. Iraq, historically speaking, actually been a source of threat to Iran, because it's a vibrant country, it's very resourceful. If it gets itself stabilized, it can actually project threat against Iran. Yeah. I think influence in Iraq and Yemen would be priority, and Islamic Republic would readjust the rest of its military doctrine and ambitions.
That's fantastic analysis. I mean, we could talk about this all day. There's so many nuances, but we want to keep this tight just for our audience so we can get this out. Hopefully things won't change too much before we record this. Yep. and we actually publish it. But Arman, thank you so much for joining us from an undisclosed location, which I don't know, looks strangely like your living room, but I'll just call it an undisclosed location on vacation. Thank you for joining us today. So many thanks to GNSI Research Fellow Dr. Arman Mahmoudian for keeping us current and informed on the events unfolding every hour, basically, in Iran, Israel, and the Middle East. He's also a frequent contributor to BBC Persia programming. And like I said, you'll see him on LinkedIn and X, a great analysis there. And he's currently leading GNSI's Axis of Resistance Research, a comprehensive analysis of the countries and non-state actors assembled by Iran over the years, specializing in malign influence over the region. In fact, the latest video for that project just dropped this past week on our YouTube channel. Be sure to check it out. Next week on At the Boundary, in our regular episode, we'll be checking in with author Dr. Jeff Rogg, who's also a senior research fellow here at GNSI. His new book, The Spy and the State, The History of American Intelligence, has grabbed national attention around the intelligence community. We're looking forward to that interview. It's going to be a great conversation. Don't miss it. That's going to wrap up this episode of At the Boundary. Each new episode will feature global and national security issues we found to be insightful, intriguing, maybe controversial, but overall just worth talking about. I'm Jim Cardoso, and we'll see you at the Boundary.